My stepson and his buddies broke into my garage, trashed my car, and filmed it while calling me a loser. I filed a lawsuit. The court papers were handed to him at graduation. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now, let's get started. When I married Melissa, I thought I could build something real. Not perfect, just real. She came with a teenage son, Tyler, and a house that needed more work than I admitted out loud. The gutters sagged. The backyard was half weeds, half broken fence. I didn't mind. I liked fixing things. I told myself people were the same. If you worked hard enough, showed up every day, eventually the cracks would hold. We moved into a 2-story home just outside Denver. A quiet street, trimmed lawns, neighbors who waved but never asked questions. I paid for everything: mortgage, insurance, repairs, tuition, groceries, her car. It wasn't about control. It was about security. I wanted Melissa and Tyler to feel safe. I thought love meant removing every burden before they could even feel its weight. Maybe that was my first mistake. Tyler didn't hate me at first. He was polite in the way teenagers are when they want to end conversations quickly. Thanks, he'd say, without looking up from his phone. Sure, whatever. I drove him to baseball practice, helped with college essays, fixed the dent in his old truck when he backed into a pole. I wanted him to know I was dependable. I thought effort was a language anyone could understand. But some people only speak inheritance, not effort. His father, Mark, was the kind of man who could vanish for 11 months and reappear with a gift that rewrote history. A drone 1 year, a leather jacket another. Tyler's face would light up in a way it never did around me. Melissa would see it, pretend not to. She'd say, "He's just a kid. Don't take it personally." But how do you not take it personally when the person you feed, clothe, and drive everywhere looks through you like glass? As the years passed, the distance hardened. Little things at first, the way he'd leave his plate on the counter after dinner, waiting for someone else to clean it. The way he'd introduce me to his friends as my mom's husband, never by name. The way Melissa would sigh instead of correcting him. Each moment small, forgettable on its own. But together, they built a quiet hostility that filled the house like static. I told myself to endure. That was my role, the steady hand, the man who doesn't break. When Tyler slammed doors, I fixed the hinges. When he called me old-fashioned, I laughed it off. When he took my car without asking, I filled the gas tank the next morning. I thought patience was proof of love. I didn't realize it was also the first step toward erasure. Melissa noticed the tension, but she was a peacekeeper by nature. Her philosophy was simple: ignore the storm and maybe it will forget to rain. When I tried to talk to her, she'd brush my hand and whisper, "He'll grow out of it." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Because if she was wrong, it meant I'd built my life on a fault line. By the time Tyler turned 17, he barely spoke to me. The only conversations we had involved money, gas, school fees, baseball tournaments. I always said yes. I was afraid that saying no would make me the villain. That's how fathers, real or pretend, lose their families, I thought, by denying what others demand. So I gave and gave and gave. My paychecks disappeared into a boy who wouldn't even look me in the eye. One night he came home late, past midnight. I heard him stumbling through the kitchen, the clatter of something falling. I found him leaning against the counter, eyes red, smelling like beer and smoke. I didn't shout. I just said, "You're better than this." He laughed. "You're not my dad." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were new, I'd heard them before in subtler ways, but because of how easily they came out of his mouth. Like he'd been saving them. When I told Melissa, she sighed. "He didn't mean it. He's just angry." I nodded. But I knew anger doesn't invent words. It only frees the ones we hide. After that night, I started noticing how often my name wasn't spoken in my own house. When friends called, Melissa would say we're fine, never he's fine. When Tyler talked about family vacations, he meant trips with his dad. When he posted photos online, I was never in them. I existed between frames, the man holding the camera, forgotten the second the shutter closed. Still, I kept trying. I bought him new baseball gear, hoping to rekindle something. I drove him to practice even when he sat in silence the whole way. When he got his driver's license, I handed him the keys to my second car, an old Honda with a warning about responsibility. He nodded without listening. That summer, I found scratches on the side door, deep ones. He blamed a shopping cart. I paid for the repairs. Melissa said I was being too hard on him, that boys make mistakes. I told her respect isn't a mistake. It's a choice. She didn't answer. The silence between us grew thicker. Meals became quiet, filled with clinking silverware and the faint hum of the TV. Tyler started eating in his room. When he did join us, he'd correct me on things he knew nothing about: cars, politics, work. Melissa would laugh awkwardly, try to change the subject. Every dinner felt like walking on glass. Then came the night that ended patience. I'd worked late, a storm rolling over Denver on my drive home. The streets shimmered with rain, and thunder cracked over the hills like splitting wood. When I pulled into the driveway, the garage door was open, half bent, like someone had forced it. My stomach dropped. I stepped out, shoes sinking into puddles, and saw it. My old '67 Mustang, the one I'd been restoring piece by piece for years, sitting under the flickering light. The car was ruined. The hood was gouged with deep scratches, the kind you make when you don't stop. Spray paint covered the doors. Crude words, laughter frozen in color. The seats were slashed, the dash cracked. On the workbench, duct taped to the wall, a phone blinked with a red recording light. I pressed play. The video showed Tyler and his friends. 4 of them, maybe 5, crowding around the car, drinks in hand. They were laughing, shouting over music. "Look at this old junker," one of them said. "He acts like it's worth something." Tyler was behind the camera, his voice unmistakable. "It's his baby," he laughed. "Let's show that useless nobody what real family means." They kicked the tires. One of them climbed onto the hood and jumped. The metal bent under his weight. The others cheered. When the clip ended, I stood there, the phone still glowing in my hand. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just vandalism. It was mockery. Premeditated, recorded, shared. The car wasn't valuable to anyone but me. It was the only thing I'd built before Melissa, before Tyler. Something that was mine alone. Now it was a message: you don't belong here. I remember walking into the house quietly, my shoes leaving wet prints across the floor. Melissa was on the couch, half asleep, the TV flashing soft blue across her face. I stood there for a long time, watching her breathe, wondering what I had been holding together all these years. When she opened her eyes, I said only one sentence: "Tyler destroyed my car." Her expression shifted: shock, guilt, fear. Then came the words that still echo in me: "He was just messing around. Don't ruin his future over this." That was the moment the last thread snapped. The silence, the sacrifices, the years of being the steady man, all of it collapsed under that single defense. Don't ruin his future. As if mine had never mattered. I showed Melissa the video the next morning. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clenched in her lap, eyes fixed on the screen while the sound of laughter filled the room. She didn't look at me once. When it ended, she pressed her palms against her knees and whispered, "He's just a kid. He didn't mean it. Didn't mean it." Those 3 words landed harder than the laughter on the tape. I waited for her to say something else. Anger, apology, anything, but she didn't. She only added, "Don't ruin his life over this. Ruin his life." As if mine wasn't already in pieces, scattered under the wreck of that car. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. I sat in the truck, the cold steering wheel under my hands, and for a long time I just stared at the rain sliding down the windshield. The weight of years pressed on my chest. Every bill I had paid, every sleepless night, every quiet humiliation, all leading here, to a phone full of proof that I had been the punchline of my own family. I don't remember driving to the station. I just remember the fluorescent lights, the sterile smell, the young officer who looked too fresh-faced to understand. I handed him the phone, the recording, the pictures. My voice barely worked when I said, "I want to file a report." He asked if I was sure. I said yes. For once in my life I was sure. It wasn't revenge. It was recognition. I wanted the world, any world, to say what no one in my house would. That what he did mattered. That it wasn't harmless. That I wasn't invisible. The report was clean. The evidence undeniable. Damage to private property, premeditated, documented. A few days later, a detective called. Tyler would be charged. Because of the value of the damage, it would move to adult court. The words didn't bring me joy. They brought quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry, I was empty. Melissa didn't speak to me for 2 days. When she finally did, her voice trembled. "You can't do this," she said. "He'll get a record. It'll follow him forever." I looked at her, the woman I had built a life around, and said, "So will this." I held up the phone again. The screen cracked from where I dropped it that night. Forever works both ways. She cried then. Real tears. But not for me. When the summons arrived, the silence in the house became unbearable. Tyler stayed locked in his room, coming out only when I wasn't home. Melissa moved through the days like a ghost, her eyes avoiding mine. At night, I heard them whisper, her trying to reason, him cursing under his breath, calling me a traitor. I lay in bed listening to every word, memorizing them, because they were the truth stripped of pretense. The day of the hearing, I wore my work clothes. I didn't want to look like someone seeking pity. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. A box of polished wood and recycled air. Tyler sat beside his lawyer, a man who looked bored before we even began. Melissa sat behind them. She didn't meet my eyes. The judge was an older woman, the kind whose gaze could cut through excuses. She played the video in silence. The laughter filled the room again. The image of my car, that broken, painted corpse of memory, glowed across the wall. When it ended, no one spoke. Even Tyler's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Sanders, do you wish to make a statement?" I shook my head. What could I say that the video hadn't already screamed? She looked at Tyler. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" He stared at the floor. "It was just a prank." The judge's voice dropped low. "A prank worth $8,000 in damages." I watched him flinch. It was the first real emotion I'd seen from him in months. The court postponed sentencing pending restitution. But the message was clear, this wasn't going away. Tyler didn't understand yet. He thought his mother would fix it, that I would fold, that I always did. But I didn't. When we left the courthouse, Melissa caught my arm. "Please," she said, "drop it. For me." I pulled free. "For you, I already gave everything." That night, Tyler posted online, pictures, jokes, half-truths. "My stepdad's ruining my life." The comments poured in. Friends called me names, strangers mocked me. I read every word, not because I cared, but because it reminded me how easily lies spread when no one wants the truth. The next week crawled by. The insurance company called, the repair shop sent estimates, and the house became a war zone of silence. Melissa tried to cook, to pretend, but her eyes were hollow. Tyler avoided me completely. Once I heard him shouting on the phone, his real father probably, saying he needed money for legal fees. I almost laughed. The man who vanished for years now had to answer a call he couldn't ignore. One evening, Melissa cornered me in the kitchen. "You've made your point," she said. "He's scared. He's sorry. Isn't that enough?" I poured a glass of water. "I'm not trying to scare him. I'm trying to make him see." She slammed her hand on the counter. "See what? That actions have weight. That everything he breaks, people, things, trust, costs something." Her eyes filled with tears again, but they weren't for me. They never were. "You're supposed to be the adult," she said. "You're supposed to forgive." I looked at her and whispered, "I've been forgiving for years. That's why we're here." The night before the ruling, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the garage, what was left of it, staring at the ruined Mustang. The smell of paint still lingered. I ran my hand over the dents, the sharp edges where the metal had folded. It wasn't the car I was mourning. It was what it represented. The one thing that had been mine, destroyed by the person I had tried hardest to love. The morning light felt different when it came. Harder. I watched Melissa and Tyler leave for the courthouse. I followed in a separate car. I didn't sit with them. I didn't speak. When the judge read the decision, her voice was calm. Tyler would avoid jail, but he'd pay restitution in full. His record would remain sealed if the payments were made on time. A mercy, really, one I wasn't sure he deserved. After the hearing, Melissa tried to thank the judge. Tyler didn't look up. When we stepped outside, she turned on me. "Are you happy now?" "No," I said. "But I'm done pretending." We drove home in silence. Tyler went straight to his room. Melissa followed him, and I stayed in the driveway, staring at the empty garage like it was a grave. The sky was gray, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. The exhaustion, the futility, the truth that nothing I built here would ever hold. Later that night, I heard Melissa crying through the walls. I thought about comforting her, but what was left to say? We'd both chosen our sides. I had chosen consequence. She had chosen comfort. A message came through on my phone. A notification from an account I didn't recognize. It was a video clip. Tyler again, sitting in his room talking to his followers. "He thinks he's teaching me a lesson," he said. "But he's just bitter. Old men with no kids of their own love control." The comments laughed. Some called me pathetic. Others told him to move out. I didn't reply. I didn't even watch the clip twice. I just deleted it and set the phone down. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat by the window, watching the house across the street where another family's lights flickered through the curtains. I wondered if their dinners were quiet, if their laughter was real, if the fathers there felt seen. The court had given me justice. But justice doesn't heal. It only confirms what you already know, that something sacred has been broken, and no one is coming to fix it. When Melissa came down later, she stopped in the doorway, her face pale from crying. "You've changed," she said. "No," I told her. I finally stopped pretending I hadn't. A month later, the letter came. A plain envelope, no stamp of drama, no warning. Inside was a notice from the court. Tyler's restitution deadline, the final ruling date. Same day as his high school graduation. I didn't choose that. Life did, with the kind of cruel symmetry that almost feels deliberate. Melissa came into the kitchen holding the letter like it might burn her hands. "They scheduled it on his graduation day," she whispered, her voice breaking on the word graduation like it was supposed to mean something sacred. "You have to ask them to change it." I was making coffee. I didn't look up. "I don't control the court calendar." Her tone sharpened. "You could try. They'd listen to you. It's not too late to fix this." I stirred the cup, slow. "No, it's not too late. It's just finally fair." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. I'd spent years being calm, patient, understanding. But patience, stretched too thin, turns into something else, quiet, yes, but edged. A stillness that feels like a blade. That week, the house turned colder. Tyler barely left his room. Melissa barely spoke. I went to work, came home, repeated the cycle. Every evening I'd pass the garage. The door now replaced, the floor swept clean. But the smell of spray paint lingered in the air, stubborn as guilt. The ruined Mustang had been towed away months ago, but I could still see its outline in the dust, the shape of everything I'd lost. The night before graduation, Melissa tried one more time. She found me on the porch, the light low, moths circling the bulb. "He's sorry," she said. "He wants to make it right." "Does he?" I asked. "Or does he just want to avoid consequences?" She folded her arms. "He's your son, whether you admit it or not." That word, son, hit harder than any insult. "No, Melissa, he's yours. I tried to be part of that story. You and he wrote me out." She looked away. "You can't keep punishing him. He's just a boy." I shook my head. "No. Boys don't destroy what they didn't build. Boys don't humiliate the man who feeds them. He made a choice. Now he gets to learn what choices cost." She left without another word. Her footsteps faded upstairs, And I was alone with the night sounds. Crickets, the hum of traffic, the faint creak of the porch boards. I thought about all the times I'd sat out here waiting for Tyler to come home, rehearsing speeches about responsibility and respect, speeches I never got to give because Melissa would always say, "Let me handle it." She handled it all right. She handled it straight into rot. The morning came bright and clear. The kind of day that feels scripted: blue sky, sharp air, the smell of freshly cut grass drifting in through the open window. Melissa dressed early, quiet but shaking, her hands trembling as she pinned a flower to her dress. Tyler came downstairs in his cap and gown, eyes hollow, lips pressed tight. He looked at me like he wanted a fight but didn't have the energy to start one. For once, I didn't either. They left without saying goodbye. I didn't go to the ceremony. I went to a diner on the edge of town, ordered black coffee and eggs I didn't touch. I sat by the window, watching people drive past in their Sunday best, families smiling, kids holding bouquets. Somewhere across town, Tyler would be walking across a stage, smiling for photos, pretending nothing was wrong. But I knew the truth. There's always a moment when the mask slips. It happened sooner than I expected. Halfway through my coffee, my phone buzzed. A message from the court officer. Documents served. That was all. 2 words. The sound of a door closing somewhere I couldn't see. Later, I saw the pictures online. Someone had captured it, the exact moment. Tyler on stage, shaking hands, reaching for his diploma. When a man in a dark suit stepped forward, expression unreadable, and handed him an envelope. The applause died mid-clap. You could almost feel the silence ripple through the crowd. A teacher tried to smooth it over, but the damage was done. Tyler's smile broke, his hands froze. Melissa stood in the front row, her face pale as chalk. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not with pride, not with revenge, just recognition. The world had finally caught a glimpse of the truth I'd been living in for years. The cost of disrespect, printed in daylight for everyone to see. That evening, Melissa called. Her voice was cracked and raw. "How could you let that happen?" she screamed. "He's humiliated." Everyone saw. I didn't raise my voice. So did I months ago. Remember? When he spray-painted my life into a joke. She sobbed. "You've ruined everything." "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped fixing what you and he kept breaking." The line went dead. Days passed. The silence deepened. Melissa moved through the house like a ghost, packing boxes when she thought I wasn't looking. Tyler stayed gone. Friends' houses, maybe his father's, I didn't care to ask. The tension that once lived in the corners now sat beside me at breakfast, across from me at dinner, a companion too familiar to ignore. A week later, she told me she was leaving. "It's not working anymore," she said, as if our life were a broken appliance. "Tyler can't even look at you. You've turned him into someone bitter." I almost laughed. He was bitter long before I ever held him accountable. She flinched, but she didn't argue. She finished taping a box and said, "You'll regret this one day." "Maybe," I replied, "but at least it'll be my regret." She left the next morning. No ceremony, no tears, just the sound of the front door closing, soft but final. I stood in the empty hallway for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall. The house felt larger, hollow, stripped of noise. But beneath the emptiness, there was something else, calm. Not joy, not relief, just calm, like the air after a long storm. That night, I sat in the living room with a glass of bourbon and my phone. One message blinked on the screen. It was from Tyler. No subject line, no greeting. Just 3 words. "I get it now." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and walked outside. The sky above Denver was cloudless, stars scattered like ashes. I thought about replying, about saying something, anything that might soften the edges. But understanding means nothing after the damage is done. So I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the garage. The new door gleamed under the light. Inside, the floor was clean, empty, almost peaceful. I ran my hand along the workbench, the same one where the phone had once hung, recording my humiliation. The wall was bare now, but I could still hear their laughter echoing faintly in my memory. I didn't feel hatred, just distance. The kind that can't be crossed anymore. Some nights, I still see the video in my dreams. The paint spraying, the laughter, the word useless bouncing off the walls. But in the dream, I don't shout. I don't chase them. I just watch. Because that's what I had been all along. A witness to my own life, watching other people break it. I used to think silence meant defeat. Now I understand it differently. Silence is the sound of letting go. It's the sound of truth finally speaking louder than love. And when you've spent years being the man who fixes everything, letting go feels almost holy. A year has passed. Sometimes I measure it not in days, but in the absence of noise. No slammed doors. No half-hearted laughter from a boy pretending not to hate me. No footsteps upstairs that made me tense without knowing why. The house is gone now, sold to a couple with a golden retriever and plans for children. I moved into a small apartment near the foothills, the kind of place where silence isn't an intruder but a neighbor. The air smells of pine and dust. The nights are long, but they don't hurt. People ask how I'm doing. I tell them the truth that feels polite. Better. What I don't say is that peace is not the same as happiness. Peace is just the moment you stop expecting an apology. Sometimes I drive past the old street. The mailbox still leans slightly to the left. The tree I planted still shades the front porch. I never stop. I just look through the windshield and keep going, as if the life I built there belongs to someone else. Someone who believed that effort could bend bloodlines, that love could be welded together like metal if you held it long enough over the fire. Couldn't. I learned that too late. I hear things now and then, from mutual friends, from people who don't know they're delivering news. Tyler's working part-time at a gas station, taking night classes. Apparently he quit drinking, left that same group of friends who thought vandalism was a language. Good for him, I suppose. Growth is a form of grace, even if it comes from ruin. Melissa remarried, or so I'm told. A coworker mentioned seeing her at a wedding with a man younger than me. I didn't ask questions. There's nothing left to ask. She chose her peace too, even if it means rewriting the past in gentler colors. Maybe, in her version, I was too strict, too cold, too unwilling to forgive. Maybe that's the story she needs to sleep at night. Let her have it. I'm tired of defending my own scars. Every once in a while, I scroll through old photos stored in my cloud account, the ones I didn't delete out of reflex. Tyler at 13, his first game. Me in the stands, hands cupped around my mouth, shouting his name. His smile caught in mid-motion, before resentment became habit. I stare at that boy and wonder when exactly he stopped seeing me. Which moment was the hinge, the point where kindness turned invisible. There's a cruel symmetry in fatherhood that no one talks about. You give and give until the giving becomes background noise, and then the day comes when you realize they think the noise was always there, that it didn't come from you. You were just another hum in the house, replaceable, unremarkable, necessary until you weren't. I used to believe forgiveness was the highest form of love, that holding on to anger made you small. But forgiveness without recognition is just surrender. I gave that family everything. Time, money, patience, parts of myself I can't get back. And when the test came, they chose convenience over truth. So I stopped choosing them. It sounds harsh when I say it out loud, but there's a strange mercy in finality. I don't wonder anymore what could have been fixed. I don't wake in the night rehearsing the argument I never won. I don't look for Tyler's name in my messages. The last one he sent, I get it now, still sits there unopened. Not because I'm angry, but because I don't need closure that arrives only after consequence. I think about him sometimes, though. I imagine him walking through the aisles of that gas station, the hum of coolers filling the silence. Maybe he looks at the older men who come in wearing work boots, tired eyes, the kind of faces that belong to fathers who stayed. Maybe he sees something there he missed before. Maybe not. Either way, life will teach him what I couldn't. That respect is the only currency that doesn't lose value. As for me, I've built a smaller life, but one that fits. My evenings are simple. A walk after work, a book, a quiet dinner. Sometimes I drive into the mountains and sit by the edge of a frozen lake, watching the light fade behind the ridges. The stillness feels earned. There's no audience here, no judgment, no laughter echoing through the walls. Just me breathing, existing. A man reduced to the bare truth of himself. I don't hate Melissa. I don't hate Tyler. Hate requires hope, and I have none left to spend on them. What remains is a dull kind of acceptance. Not forgiveness, not bitterness, just the understanding that some stories end not with closure, but with distance. A few weeks ago, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper, creased and smudged. The handwriting was familiar, uneven. I'm trying, Mike. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying. Thank you for what you did, even if I didn't deserve it. No signature, but it didn't need one. I sat there for a long time, the paper soft between my fingers. For a moment, I felt something stir. Not joy, not forgiveness, but a quiet acknowledgement that maybe the lesson had taken root. Then I folded it back up and placed it in the drawer with my old receipts. Proof of something. Maybe that I wasn't wrong to draw the line. Some nights I think about the last thing Melissa said before she left. You'll regret this one day. I've waited a year for the regret to arrive. It hasn't. Maybe it never will. Maybe that's what real peace feels like, not comfort, not pride, but the absence of that gnawing need to be understood. I keep a photograph on my nightstand. It's not of them. It's of the Mustang before the damage. Sunlight hitting the hood just right, chrome gleaming like a promise. Sometimes I stare at it before bed and remind myself, not everything broken deserves to be rebuilt. Some things are meant to stay wrecked, as evidence that they once existed whole. There's a strange freedom in accepting loss without turning it into a lesson. Maybe that's what this all was. Not punishment, not redemption, just the long, inevitable unraveling of a lie. I tried to build a family out of obligation and optimism. I ended up building a monument to endurance instead. So now, when people talk about forgiveness, about second chances, I just listen. I don't argue. They wouldn't understand. You can't explain to someone what it feels like to be erased by the very people you carried. You can only live through it and come out quieter on the other side. I don't know what the future holds for them, for him, for her. Maybe he'll become a man worth knowing. Maybe he'll be a better father than the one he had, or the one I tried to be. Maybe one day he'll stand in front of his own child and see me in the back of that reflection. Not as a ghost, but as a warning. Was I wrong? That question still hangs in the air some nights, heavy as the scent of rain before a storm. I ask it not because I doubt my choice, but because it reminds me I was human enough to care. Maybe that's the real truth of it, that I wasn't trying to teach anyone a lesson. I was just trying to stop bleeding. Would you have done any differently? Tell me, if it were you, would you have kept forgiving? Or would you have finally, quietly, walked away?